Hello, hello, crafty friends. It is Shalon back here with the Printable Cuttable Creatables design team with a new bit of project inspiration for you. What I have here is a floating candle decor vase or jar that's actually been repurposed from a Yankee candle that I used to have. If you put your Yankee candle in the freezer, you can actually pretty easily just use a butter knife to pop the whole thing out and dump it off. And then you can wash it and all of the sticker goo and everything will come off with just a little bit of warm and sudsy water. And if you have a little bit of that residue that is left behind, you can get that off with a little bit of isopropyl rubbing alcohol. What I have here is I am at my craft desk and I am currently using the Hearts Boho rainbow file in conjunction with the hearts from the Elephants in Love Clipart and SVG file from the Printable Cuttable Creatable site. And I am setting up these files and combining these files in order for me to use them as a stencil so I can etch using some etching cream on the glass from the jar. What I'm doing here is I am taking my the favorite parts that I like from both of those files and I am combining them. And that's something that I really love about Kristen's files is that you really can combine them and use them however you want to, and they are really flexible and they work really well together. So what I'm doing here is I decided that I wanted to have the boho rainbow appear on two sides of the jar, and then I wanted to have the other hearts kind of scattered all about. And then I put a box around each file, and I'm just nesting it here on my mat to cut it out because when I put it on my jar, I'm really going to be using the negative space. So it's important that each design element from the files have a box around it. So when I weed it off the vinyl and I stick it onto the jar, I have a place for my etching cream to land and then to separate from the parts that I don't want the etching cream on. Right here you see that I have already successfully cut out my vinyl, and I'm actually using Oramask stencil vinyl because that's what I happen to have on hand. However, I have done etching projects with just regular 651 vinyl as well, if that's all that you have on hand. To begin my weeding process, I just pulled away all of the extra vinyl, and then what I'm doing here is I'm just really being careful. As you can see, I'm kind of zooming in there because I want to weed out the positive pieces, the pieces that you would normally adhere on a regular vinyl project. Those are the parts I'm actually going to weed away, and the parts there, like those little bubble pieces on the heart, are actually going to stay behind. So when I put on the etching cream and then I wash it away, it actually looks like the positive part of the vinyl. So when I weed, I always just need to make sure that I just take a little bit of extra time and I make sure that I weed away carefully, because by default I feel like you want to remove the negative space, but I want to keep the negative space. So I always just need to be a little bit mindful of that when I'm weeding. I have already here a little fast forward movie magic for you. I have already successfully weeded all of my hearts and the boho rainbow, and then I'm just cutting out each individual box because that is how I'm going to be placing them on my jar, so I can do the stenciling and I can do the editing. So what I'm doing right here is I'm grabbing a book, which is my little hack for the vinyling, and is I just take a book and I open it up and I place my jar or my mug or my tumbler, whatever it is that's round, in the crook of a book, and that's what I use to hold it, and it actually works out really, really well. What I'm doing here is I am just adhering my stencil vinyl using some transfer tape, just like I would for any kind of other vinyl project. I made sure that I use some isopropyl alcohol to clean off the surface of my glass first, just to make sure that there's no you know, bits of debris or fingertips that might prevent my vinyl from adhering exactly the way that I want to. I always like to kind of fold it up a little bit so then I get my placement correct with my finger, and I always go down the middle and I work my way out so I don't have as many air bubbles or anything like that. Something else that I always try to do is I just try to remember that since I am using an etching cream, that I try to make sure that my edges are sealed really well around the different hearts and the rainbows, because I don't want any etching cream to seep underneath there and mess with my crisp lines. I'm just going through here and I am just placing them kind of crisscross and cattywampus and just haphazardly, just because I want it to have a kind of fun and whimsical feel. I made sure that I put my two boho rainbows on opposite sides of each other, so regardless on where you are viewing this from, you have a good viewpoint of the boho rainbow that I am just so in love with. I really, really love that rainbow. I've actually used it for a couple of different projects because I just love that boho rainbow. And I just want to make sure that when I'm doing my placement that I don't leave any parts that are too big, that don't have any kind of etching. I want them to be scattered about somewhat evenly. Here I am preparing to put my etching cream on my jar. I put down a craft mat because I don't want to accidentally drop any etching cream on my other craft mat that I use for all of my paperwork. So I made sure to put down that that brown Teflon craft mat. I did put on gloves because it can burn your skin, the chemical, and so I wanted to protect my skin. And I'm just using a regular sponge brush there, and I'm just plopping it up and down. I find that plopping it up and down is a better technique than painting or brushing it on, because A, it helps with the etching cream to not seep underneath the edges, and also it goes on thicker, and in my experience a thicker application helps with more solid and clear etch. Because this is a chemical process, you really want to make sure that you are putting plenty of that cream on that white space, and you also want to make sure that you're not going outside of your vinyl border there, because any etching cream that touches the glass will react and it will leave that etching look. You have to be neat in your application. Again, I'm just dabbing up and down. You want to have a thick, even coat, and you really want to pay attention to your application and your edges. The jar recommends that you leave the etching cream on from 2 to 3 minutes. In my experience, that's not nearly enough time. I like to leave the etching cream on for about 20 minutes. In fact, I did set my timer for 20 minutes exactly. And then here I am in my kitchen sink, and I am just rinsing it off. Because I do leave it on for 20 minutes, it does start to dry. So it does need a little bit of zhuzhing and rubbing to completely come off, but it's not a problem at all. And I actually just use a little bit of warm water. And if the vinyl starts to peel off, that's fine. You do not need that vinyl anymore. So there are some of little baby dots that are in the boho rainbow that actually start to come off on my glove, and I welcome it because it's just going to help the whole process move along a little bit faster. One thing I would recommend is just to make sure that you are doing this clear of any actual dishes or food or in a sink, like maybe a utility sink in a basement or something like that, just because you don't want to mix the chemical with anything that you will be eating. Here I have an old towel that I like to use for different kind of crafty projects, and I'm starting to peel away the Oramask stencil vinyl, and it does come off pretty easily. There are some parts that are a little bit sticking and need a little bit of negotiating just to peel off, but for the most part it really does come out well. And something that I'm doing here is I just wanted to see how crisp the lines come out, and so when the jar is still wet, sometimes it makes it a little bit difficult to tell what parts are wet, what parts are dry. So I like to, you know, just kind of dry it up and just to see. And what I was just pointing to there were the little dots that were a part of the boho rainbows. They came out so crisp and clear, and I was really happy for how those dots came out, because I was a little bit unsure how they would take to the etching cream, if the etching cream would go in those holes and seep in and it would just kind of blur out the little dots, which I was prepared for, but I was very pleasantly surprised that there was no seepage and I did get the full effect of the file to have those nice holes come out cleanly as on the actual project, which was really nice. So here we go, the completed project. I'm very happy with how it came out. Trying to show you there a little bit against the black contrast. And here is the final file. I will be using it as a little bit of Valentine's Day decor on my dining room table. And thank you so much for watching. Happy crafting, friends. Bye-bye.